Hi kindergarten friends, it's Mrs. Rasnick here to start our science for today. Today we're going to be doing some pumpkin exploration. We're going to be looking at pumpkins and observing some things about them using our eyes. And then we're going to do a couple of quick experiments just like we did with our apples a few weeks ago. For this activity, you can do it along with me at home or you can just watch if you want to. If you're going to do it along with me at home, you'll need a few things. I have two pumpkins actually with me today. I have one white pumpkin and I have one that's a really interesting orange color. You'll only need one pumpkin if you're doing this at home. I'm going to use two because part of it, when we put it in water, my white one is just a little bit too big. You're also going to need some blocks. We're going to be measuring how tall the pumpkin is. And then the last thing you'll need is a big bowl of water, big enough to fit your pumpkin in. Okay, because we're going to be putting your pumpkin in this water in a little bit. This week we're also going to be using a special paper that you picked up at school. Before we get started, I'm going to show you how to glue this little flap on your paper so you'll be able to lift it up for your answers. So if you want to do this along with me at home, you'll also want to find this paper that says Pumpkin Investigation. So before I get started, I am going to do that gluing part so our paper is ready. On your big piece of paper, underneath where the kids are, it says glue here. So with a glue stick or a piece of tape or even liquid glue if you're using that, you want to put glue just inside that rectangle where it says glue here. And then in that space on your glue, you're going to glue your Pumpkin Investigation paper. And you should be able to open it like a book like this after you've glued it. So open and close. And we're going to be following the 4 different activities to find out more about our pumpkins. The first activity says, how many lines are on our pumpkin? Before you start counting, we're going to make a hypothesis. We're going to make a guess. So I just want you to take a look at my pumpkin or yours if you have one at home. And guess, how many do you think there are? And when you're making a guess, there's no right or wrong answer. So you can go ahead now. We're going to make our guess and you're going to write it underneath the flap on this first space where it says, I think there are blank lines. So go ahead and copy your number down here now. And once you have that, we can start counting and checking your answer. All right, let's see if you were right or if you were even close to the number. This was kind of a tricky one. I'm going to count the lines. Sometimes we call these ribs on my white pumpkin. There are a lot of them. So if you want to count with me, you can help me out. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So this pumpkin, my pumpkin, has 22 lines or ribs on it. Yours might have more, yours might have less. So go ahead and count yours if you have one. After you count, you're going to write how many, and you can kind of compare these to see how close you were. How many lines your pumpkin actually had. It says, I counted. There are blank lines. Go ahead and record your actual number now, and then we'll do the next activity together. All right, up next, we're going to be measuring how tall our pumpkin is, just like we did with our apple. I'm going to use just little blocks like this to measure. You can use any blocks you have at home. You might have Legos, you might have those math blocks. Whatever you have, you can use if you want to measure your pumpkin too. So I'm going to start by stacking them, and I'll move my camera so you can see the bottom of my pumpkin. We're going to stack them right next to the pumpkin, and we're going to keep stacking until they're about the same height. So there's 1, there's 2, 3, and I have to move my tower a little farther away. 3, 4, 5, 6, let's see, kind of close. Let me add one more and see which one is closer. There's 7. That's about to the top of the stem of my pumpkin. So I can say that my pumpkin is 7 blocks tall. So before you measure yours, you're going to want to take another guess. You'll make a hypothesis. On the first line, you'll make a guess about how tall you think your pumpkin's going to be. And then on the second line, you can go ahead and write the actual after you measure your pumpkin. So make your guess, then you can do your measuring, and once we have those two things, we'll do the next activity together. All right, friends, our third activity, we're going to be deciding if we think the pumpkin is going to float or sink, just like we did in the apple. Remember, float means to kind of stay on top of the water and bob, just like you would if you had swimmies on your arm. And sink means to fall to the bottom of the water. So we're going to find out what happens with our pumpkin when we put it in water. Before we do this activity, you want to make a guess. You want to make a hypothesis about what you think is going to happen. So if you think it's going to float at the top of the water, you're going to copy down the word float. If you think it's going to go right to the bottom of the bowl, you're going to copy down the word sink. Go ahead and make your prediction now, your hypothesis. You're going to write it on this line here. And after you have either float or sink, then I'm going to put my orange pumpkin in the water. The white one is a little bit too big. So go ahead and copy down your word. And now let's check to see what actually happens. So I'm going to drop the orange pumpkin in my bowl of water. And I want you to notice if it floats, if it stays at the top of the water, or if it sinks. Give it a second. Interesting. Just like the apple, the pumpkin is actually staying above the bottom of the bowl, and it's floating around inside of the bowl. So we know now that pumpkins have something in common with apples. They float in water. And when we did the apple experiment, we talked about how it's because there's little air pockets on the inside. So I wonder if that's the same with our pumpkin on the inside. So now that we've done that activity, you can go ahead and copy down the word float. Now that we know that it's going to float, we're going to use the top word here, and we're going to copy it down on your second line that says, I placed it in water and found out that it blank. And this, we're going to write the word float here. That's the top word on your screen. After you have that copied down, I'm going to tell you about the last activity. The last activity is optional, which means you don't have to do it. If you want to, you'll need a grown-up for the last activity. The last activity on our pumpkin investigation is to guess and see how many seeds are inside your pumpkin. I will give you a little bit of a warning if you want to do this. Pumpkins can be very, very messy on the inside, okay? I'm not even going to cut open my pumpkins because it's too big of a mess for me right now. But if you want to on your own, you definitely need a grown-up to do this part. If you don't want to do this part, just like me, I'm not going to do it because it's too messy, you can make a guess. You can just do the hypothesis part. So I'm just going to make a guess about how many seeds are inside of my pumpkin. And I'll go back to using my bigger pumpkin. If you're doing this at home and you want to cut open your pumpkin, make sure you ask a grown-up first. If you do cut open your pumpkin, then you can write the number for how many seeds you found. If you don't like me, that's okay. You can just make a guess. I'm going to guess that this white pumpkin has a lot of seeds. I'm going to say it probably has, I would say 100 is probably a good guess for how many seeds inside this pumpkin. After you finish your guess or your last activity, you can decorate this outside of the paper. And if you want to send a picture to your teacher to see that you did the science experiment, that would be awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed exploring pumpkins today, and I will see you again next week.